7 force field. Don't worry. I'll break you out of there. Glad I could help.
Get the fuck out right now, you fucking fascist! Get the fuck out!
Alright, I'm gonna start this video off with an unsolicited advertisement for Huggies. You know, sometimes people say, Faith, why do you keep baby's wipes inside your car? And I tell them, because you never know when you're gonna run into Antifa.
Get out of here! Get the fuck out of here!
Now, today I did more than use those wipes for my hands. I used them for my whole face, because it was drenched in Antifa saliva. Hey, no, don't touch my property. And I know what you're thinking, Faith. You're a Christian, turn the other cheek. Well, the other cheek got covered in saliva too. So let's start from the beginning of the crazy day that I just had. I am currently on my way back to Toronto, Ontario, where I live, heading back from Quebec, the southern border. Now, anyone who watches any of my videos or follows any of my social media knows that I'm obsessed with Canada's border crisis. See, without ever polling the audience, without any sort of a democratic mandate, one Justin Trudeau decided to send out a tweet literally welcoming all the world's self-professed refugees to Canada. Now, so far in the past year, we've accepted over 50,000 illegals, which might not sound like a lot to you Yanks over there, but it's a giant number considering that we have a fraction of the population y'all do. Now, 6,000 of those illegals just this year alone have crossed through a single port of entry. Now, that port of entry is between southern Quebec and upstate New York, a road called Roxham Road. And I've shown all sorts of footage as to the absolute clown world that is transpiring there. We've got RCMP officers building bridges and carrying luggage, and it's a catch and release program, and these people are put on social assistance, and they're coming through with everything from MS-13 warnings and child pornography to stage 4 cancer. And by the way, they get our gold-plated healthcare system as well. But I digress, because apparently there are some people who are just sort of into that type of thing. I don't know if they like paying taxes. I don't know if they just like to be really culturally enriched. But there is a group, I am told, that really wants even more open borders for Canada. And so I caught wind of the fact that they were meeting down at the border today. So I took the 6-hour drive, made the 6-hour drive down here to come and check it out. Well, I was very promptly greeted, literally almost the second I got out of my car, by a man with a red star on his hat and a refugee's welcome button.
You can go the fuck away is what he told you to do, yep.
But guess what? It's just the refugees he wants, not one Faith Goldie.
You're not a refugee?
That's right, folks. Refugees are welcome in Canada, but Canadian citizens that pay taxes and abide by the laws, they're not welcome, according to these knobs. Now, the rest of my time on the ground there was sort of brief and boring and your usual host of kind of anti-fascista antics. Lots of signs in my face, some soy boys telling me off, they're alpha females with weird hair and body odor all telling me to get lost. So I figured, you know what, let's hit the road, but not before I talked to some officers who told me that there was a right-wing counter-protest happening just up yonder. So I figured, you know what, let's go over there and see what the right-wingers are doing, because this place is just sort of lame. Now, I started making my way to the car, and that's when Mr. Red Star and another buddy of his started to literally chase me back to the car, I guess to document my license plate, but guess what? I was onto them, so I flipped up the back of my trunk so they couldn't see my license plate and kind of sped away and then put it down later on. And so began chapter 2, and perhaps the most interesting chapter of my day. I went to the place where officers had told me that the right-wingers were meeting, and upon getting there, from a bird's eye, I honestly thought that there were right-wingers. To be honest, a lot of people just wear all black on either side of the aisle, and so I thought I was kind of walking into a group of mostly friendlies. Now, as I got closer and started to discern the fact that there were no national or provincial flags anywhere, I started to get a sort of sneaking suspicion that these people were not of similar mind to myself. Now, as soon as it dawned on me that, holy smokes, we've just walked into the lion's den, this is an Antifa cesspool, well, they had spotted me too. And this is how I was greeted once again.
Get the fuck out of here!
Now, it only took about 60 to 90 seconds before tensions really started to escalate on the ground. Things went from friendly chirps and sort of low blows to absolute physical confrontation. I was with someone who was traveling with me for my own protection, and very, very quickly we became totally surrounded. The usual words of neo-Nazi, fascists, etc. were being yelled at us, but I felt sort of safe, kind of, because of the fact that there were officers in both regular uniform and riot gear alike. Then they began to become a bit more confrontational, really getting up in my personal space. Now, you can see from various journalists who were also on the ground, and of course not being treated the same way as me, that we were entirely encircled, that we were acting completely peacefully. And I'll add here, I didn't so much as try to ask these guys any questions. I identified myself very properly and was very peaceful and just let the camera basically do the capturing. I wasn't providing very much commentary whatsoever. But you can see from these journalists that we were backing away from protesters. I actually sought some shelter closer to police in hopes that that would create some sort of a buffer zone, and should things get hairy, well, that they would step in. Alas, that was not to be. Now, I couldn't tell you how many times I was spat on, let alone the person that I was with. Loogies right in the face. And we're talking about really gross, sticky loogies.
Documenting what's going on. Hey, no, don't touch my property.
I've never seen human saliva like this. Lizard people, alien people, they might exist and they might be embodied in Antifa. I'm not even kidding you guys. This was a totally different situation. So the spitting was one thing, but then came the hitting. Constant movements to whack my phone out of my hand. You can see several different occasions when they actually came in to take swings. And this is really, really important here, because you'll notice that the people who were doing the physical altercations, well, they were actually men. And it's just sort of funny because here are these male feminist soy boys from the anti-fascist movement, and they're literally taking all of their anger out on a female. It was very bizarre. Now, you can see in my footage really the most striking encounter from the entire scene today. Now, I have to say, I am not good at putting myself in the center of the story. I don't like doing that, but I think that this one incident was a bit of a culmination of so many of the hypocrisies and so many of the things wrong with today's political culture when our political culture is taken to the streets. Point one, Antifa male feminists essentially, quite literally assaulting a female. Point two, riot gear police doing absolutely nothing when there is an assault taking place right in front of them. Point three, the mainstream media literally catching it all on tape and not doing anything to broadcast it. I want you to think for a second. If it was a bunch of violent right-wingers who had assaulted a female of any particular ethnic or racial background, what would have happened to that clip? I'll tell you right now, there would be tens of millions of views by the time we all wake up the next day. That's what would happen. So what exactly happened after the cameras got shut off? It's a question that everyone's asking me, so let me tell you to the best of my recollection of what happened. After that man assaulted me and my phone was abruptly thrown out of my hands. It fell to the floor and a bunch of them started stepping on it and kicking on it. I was going to go dive to get it, but then I thought, heck, they might start stomping on my head. I turned around to check on the person that I was traveling with, and he was down on the ground and they were trying to kick him. And so I started yelling, stop, stop, stop. I think you could hear a little bit of that on my Periscope before it completely shut out. And that's when the regular uniform officers ran towards us. To help us? To help arrest the people assaulting me? Yeah, right, fam. What they did was start pushing myself and the person I was traveling with and saying, leave, leave now. And I was yelling back, I've just been assaulted. I'd like a police escort back to my car because, of course, I'm sort of a little bit terrified that they're going to follow me back and then bash in my car, which, frankly, I pay good money for. So I was very, very confused because I was under the impression that cops, who, by the way, I get it. I'm all about the Blue Lives Matter, okay? I am not an anti-cop chicky poo whatsoever. But I was just a little bit confused because I thought it was their job to serve and protect, and here we are 2 feet away from them and I'm being assaulted repeatedly for a long period of time and nothing's being done. So I actually called up the Quebec Provincial Police to ask if there were any stand-down orders. I also sent them over all of my viz from that day, including the CTV journalist viz, so they could see just how close the officers were to us, and well, here's what I got told.
You have to understand that we cannot comment on the technique of the police officer when we are going on an event, okay? But, and what I said is maybe they didn't saw the event, I don't know, okay? I don't tell you that you are a liar, that's not what I mean.
So I boogie back to the car and think, hell, I want to get out of here. So I start to make treks back to Toronto, but I only get a couple miles out when I see an absolute convoy of about 100 to 150 cars. And when I see all the fleur-de-lis and the Quebec nationalist flags, I realize now these are the nationalists. So I get out and what do you know, there were a bunch of normal lads, peaceful. Not hitting me, not hitting each other, not smelling gross, not wearing a bunch of face masks, not doing illegal things, not defending illegal things. In fact, they were surrounded by police and just sort of chill about it. I asked the police what the plan was and they said to basically make treks down the highway. So there was a caravan and convoy that ensued and I taped a bit of it to a lot of happiness and honks and just friendliness all around. I, of course, decided to tail some of that convoy and headed down the highway. Now, I was sort of unsure of where we were going. I didn't get any specifics. I figured we were going to basically parade down the highway and then sort of go our separate ways. Then we got to the section of the highway that was right beside the Antifa hellhole in which I had just been assaulted, and I thought, wow, this is weird. I really hope that there are no altercations. I hope that the two groups don't get too close. Until I realized they were actually being ushered into a caged area, okay? Not even a joke. With Antifa on one side and the Patriots on the other side. Now, this all of a sudden started to give me flashbacks of Charlottesville. This idea of police with stand-down orders and police leading two opposing groups in towards each other in a confined area. So I got a little bit spooked, not gonna lie. Luckily though, police did do a really good job of sort of quarantining the two groups and having a giant no man's land in between them, which was strictly enforced. I, of course, spent the majority of the time with the nationalists and the patriots and asked a couple of them questions, and they all just sort of struck me as normal people.
We're here to ask our Liberal government to take its responsibility and to ensure security at our borders. We don't mind them coming in if they come in through a legal process and in a way that we can integrate them to our society.
How do you feel about the fact that Trudeau has erased our border without asking the people of Canada if they wanted it erased?
You should erase him.
What are they running from? Why would they be refugees?
I don't care what you do, but come in legal. And despite the fact that the crowd was made up of largely based boomers, you can bet your bottom dollar that the mainstream media is going to portray all of these folks as crazy alt-rights who were probably Sieg Heiling when the cameras were off. But don't worry, fam, they know for sure it happened. But you know what, fam? At the end of the day, the takeaway, it's not about me. It's not about what happened there. It's not about Antifa. It's not even about the Patriot movement. And it's not about what the police might have done right or wrong. It all boils down to this liberal prime minister, a man who is a globalist shill and an open borders radical, who without any sort of a democratic mandate just decided to erase Canada's entire southern legitimate and sacrosanct border. And guess what? All of the effects are now coming home to roost. Not only do we have a 500% increase in illegals claiming refugee status in this country, not only do we have a 500% in shelter claims for refugees across metropolises in Toronto and in Montreal, but now Justin Trudeau and his radical open borders policy is literally leading to civil war on our streets. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like below and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And hey, if you feel like supporting my journalism, check out my Patreon, PayPal, and Bitcoin links below.